Welcome across to the front three. There are three people here, but sadly we've had Sub Adam out. He's having face issues. That's what I'm going to say. We all know about those. Kristan, welcome back to the podcast. It's good to have you for the first time on the YouTube channel.
It's good to be here. It's good to break new ground on a new medium.
Obviously, we're here to pick up from the review that we just did on the Football Republic. So let's pick up where we left off, Dave. You said that Liverpool lacked Coutinho today. What do you mean?
Well, I think it's, the creative spark. You look at the assists that Liverpool have got this season. Only James Milner has more for Liverpool. Goals with 5 goals. He sort of changes games in moments. I think, Kristan, you've got a pretty decent point on that he's sort of, the spark is not there when he doesn't play. Yeah,
I think what he does is he serves like a translator role in the sense that Firmino is a lot more of a pariah when Coutinho doesn't play. And I think that's because he understands him. They play at international level as an understanding there on a base level. He also knows how the current crop play and the best way to get them success. And he's almost that bridge. And I think it's very telling that when Firmino's looked his best, it's usually when Coutinho's on the pitch as well. And it's helped Liverpool elevate to another level, I think, when they've both been there.
But then I think the frustration with Coutinho from a Liverpool point would be the inconsistency of the way that he performs and the brilliant moments sometimes, but then sometimes the breakdown of play when the ball gets to him and the slowing down, sometimes the laboured sort of, well, where are my options look that he gives. And as positive as you can be about some of the fantastic moments, I agree, that's what Liverpool lacked today, because they had Milner there, and early on there were these fantastic chances, but Lallana and Milner are on the end of them, and that's not to be disparaging about them, but you do sort of feel if a different player was on the end of that, it would have been a different outcome.
That's a quality issue. I think that pertains to the transfers. I mean,
but do you think it's quality, or do you think it's kind of execution, or sort of? I mean, you and I were talking earlier, and you were sort of saying about understanding. Not only between the team, but also between the manager and the players. And what I do think is that Klopp has brought up some of the players since coming to Liverpool, not just in terms of quality, but just in terms of understanding of the game that he wants to play. And they seem to understand that quite well. So, I don't know, how do you kind of play the two off? Because Lallana's a good player. But
he's not a great player, though, is he?
Would you say he's not a great... Would you say
no,
he's not
I would say he was. I mean, Jamie Carragher kind of singled him out a little bit in the post-match.
I thought it was a little bit unfair of Carragher, because it's also that, I mean, although Liverpool aren't having a great season, Lallana's got the most assists so far for Liverpool. Granted, that's a very low 5, so it's within a poor field, but he's still doing the best for Liverpool out of a poor set of statistics.
An attacking midfielder needs goals, though. That's the problem, is that's an important metric for them. And the fact that he's not delivering, the fact he cost £25 million, you contrast that with someone like Jorginho Wijnaldum, who's got 9 already, has managed to get an assist yesterday as well. So he's contributing on both ends of that. But
would you also say that I mean, that's also partly down to freshness in the league, and I do think that Liverpool have had somewhat of a... I think Liverpool came a little bit stilted under Rodgers, and it's somewhat Jurgen Klopp's responsibility to lift that from the players. I think Klopp is quite an enriching character, and Brendan Rodgers, from the interview on Goals on Sunday, it sounded a little bit like he had become a little bit disenchanted with the way that he worked at Liverpool, and that had translated somewhat onto the players. What performance did you see today from Liverpool, Kristan? Do you think that was a performance that deserved to win the match?
No, but that's not to say that it deserved to lose it either. I felt a draw would have really been a fair enough result, in the sense that they both cancelled each other out. Neither was really blessed with the most penetrative attack. I say that with the caveat of I am a huge fan of Anthony Martial. I think the way he carries the ball is
fantastic.
And Rooney today. I mean, Rooney, even the way that Rooney was shooting, all those I thought it looked better at least.
Yeah, he's not as good in open play in terms of he doesn't drive at defenders in the same way. Yeah. I wrote about that for ITV this week because I saw him at St James's Park, and the problem is that because Martial looks so great running with the ball and carry, it makes Rooney look even worse. Because there was a chance in the second half where Rooney is kind of one-on-one with Colaccini, quite old defender, and it was really easy for Colaccini to just dispossess him and clear the ball. And say the Wayne Rooney of 3-4 years prior, he goes at Colaccini, skips past him and he scores. And that's where you have to question it. Is he the best man to lead the line? In the sense that, is he best in that forward role, or is he better being a little bit deeper where he can pick his spots? With that said, I think Liverpool have similar issues in the fact that I don't think they know how their attack works best at the minute. They've got players there who they want to play and want to start with.
Not enough structure.
How they fit around each other. Structure, not so much.
And the weird, I mean, Dave, you were sort of alluding to the point. Benteke's outside the box when Liverpool want to be playing the ball into him. What kind of structure is that?
I don't know what it is, whether it's what Jurgen Klopp's asking him to do. Obviously, Lewandowski at Borussia Dortmund at their peak, he was the go-to man. But Lewandowski's Lewandowski, right? Benteke isn't
Great
Lewandowski.
point.
Benteke, he wants, Klopp obviously has a vision for Benteke in the future, how he wants Benteke to evolve. Maybe that is, with a little short passing outside the box, sliding people in. But Benteke, we know what Benteke is good at, and that is heading. He's a lot more one-dimensional than Lewandowski.
I think that feels a little bit reductionist to Benteke overall, though, because the analysis when he first went to Liverpool was, he's this much better player. Rodgers is getting everything, and now we're reducing him back.
But I think that I don't know what it is. There's something wrong there. They're not playing to his strengths, and that's the only thing that I can think about what they're doing. Applying a similar situation with Jurgen Klopp, with Lewandowski, another striker, how he sort of evolved in a way and how the team was built around him. Benteke is still young. I think that's the big thing we've got to remember, that he's young. He's a player that when he gets in form, with his confidence flying, he will score goals. But it's getting that out of him. I think that's what Klopp's got to do. Whether they do change the system or they do, change something up or get someone next to him, there has to be a change, which could be difficult for Klopp because he's, again, going back to Borussia Dortmund last season, he didn't change anything. They just started to take their chances. He kept the same sort of system.
Very different in the life cycle, though, isn't it, Dave?
He's very much different in the life cycle, yeah. Obviously, it is a different situation, but sort of feels like Klopp needs to develop himself again as a man. Obviously, he's an absolute brilliant coach, motivation-wise. What I loved today, again, was he brought on Stephen Corker and he threw him up front. Excellent. Why not?
Love that.
Why not?
Well,
I like that because it's something different. Because you're changing you're trying to affect the game in a positive way by making a change to get, they want to put the ball in the box. They've got Benteke. Let's throw another big guy out there. Going back to the Champions League semi-final against Malaga, where he threw on Subotic and Hummels up front, and Gundogan was playing as a quarterback, pinging the ball to him. They scored 2 goals. They won the game. They got through. That's what I like. I like managers that think, and I think Klopp is a thinker. That's where I think he will have a solution for Kristan Benteke.
He's more creative than a lot of the Premier League managers are right now, put it that way. There's a lot of very regimented thinking in the Premier League right now. But Manchester United won today, 1-0. Manchester United find themselves in 5th position, 6 points ahead of Liverpool. Chris, we've already heard some of Dave's thoughts on that. What do you think about Manchester United overall today? Herrera obviously going off the end, getting a huge standing ovation. Some people frustrated with Fellaini. But it wasn't the best of performances from United. They still got the result.
Well, I talked to Gaz at Full-Time Devils before the Newcastle game about Fellaini, and he was really critical. And personally, I disagreed with him in the moment. And yet, then I watched him midweek, I watched him today, and I just struggled to see the hole that he fits or the niche that he's got. Because again, even the idea of him being this attacking midfielder that you hit balls up to, it works, but it doesn't necessarily work for Manchester United in the sense that I don't see how Rooney and Martial fit around that. Yes, it'll shift the ball quickly upfield. I don't think that's the United way, and it really bypasses the fact that you've got Schneiderlin, Schweinsteiger, Herrera, midfielders you've spent a lot of money on to dictate a game, just to bypass them completely.
Chris, as a journalist, how difficult is it to put together 2 almost conflicting narratives? Rooney's not had a great season, and then Dave was putting forward all this 2016 malarkey at the beginning of the other preview. And then he goes on to score here. Not only that, but that's United's 100th goal at Anfield. And was it also a landmark for Rooney?
Yeah, 176th goal for Manchester United, the first player to score that many for a single club.
And that's why he's worth $500,000 a week, is what some people are alleging on Twitter.
I hope that's dollars, otherwise you maths as well. I think it's very difficult for him. Like I say, I wrote this week that of the goals he scored, 2 of them have been penalties, of the 4 that going into this game. So he needs some more from open play. And that's not just to pad the stats out, that's so he's actually influencing things. Because, again, remember what we used to say about Andy Johnson, the old Palace striker, is half his goals are penalties. So it's an impressive feat to score them. It doesn't suggest he does much in open play, though. And that's an issue for Rooney as well.
Again, he didn't really influence open play with a goal, right? It was a corner, a set piece. Again, it was a bit of a brilliant finish. But it's really interesting how Wayne Rooney has changed. Well, the point that you made before about how he doesn't go past players anymore, sort of a little bit, I just had a thought, it sort of reminds me a little bit of like the downfall of Kaká, you'd say, who at his peak was so good, so lightning, could beat people. And then it slowed down.
Let's not put Kaká down. All right.
No, Kaká's one of my favourite players ever, but what I mean that he did fall from grace.
Yep.
When he fell, he fell. And it's quite similar to Rooney, that he doesn't do what we expect a younger Wayne Rooney to do.
Chris,
gone.
It's changing your game. That's what it is. Shearer had to do the same thing. He's probably a good example because people say, well, he beat Shearer's record. Shearer was very much all action, power, brute force when he was younger. He then had 2 pretty bad knee injuries and things had to change a bit. He had to be a bit smarter. He had to accept that maybe his field of play was the 20 yards from the opposition goal line going back. I would be inclined to say that Rooney's similar in the sense that he has to adapt his game. I think he'd be better in a deeper position because he does like to pass. He does like to try and create. The idea of him being that number 9, I'm not necessarily so sure. To me, there's also similarities to Torres when Torres was at the end of days for Chelsea. Yeah. And Benitez, credit to him, was the only one to really realise that essentially what Torres needed was 3 playmakers behind him, swapping around if they wanted. But you've got to put it in the box. You've got to make it so at most he's taking 1 touch before he's hitting it. But just give him that chance where he hits it. Yeah, just hits it first time.
Natural, finish him, right?
Yeah.
Going back to what he built his career on, putting the ball in the back of the net.
Mm.
Kris, let's finish on this point. This match was almost the perfect storm for Manchester United, and it's kind of ironic that Wayne Rooney, and not ironic, it's kind of perfect that Wayne Rooney scored that, but there's a bittersweet irony for Liverpool that so many people were predicting that this Liverpool side would just go through the United team, and ultimately they didn't. And not only that, but Liverpool failed to score. They also conceded from a corner, which you were saying statistically is important, and Wayne Rooney got the goal against Simon Mignolet, who's obviously one of the most lamented players in Liverpool history at this point. Essentially, Mignolet got a hand to it, but not enough of a hand. And the ball was right at him. And that overall, there's just so much narrative there, isn't there? It's almost hard to deal with that bubble.
Well, the thing is, Liverpool have conceded the most from corners in the Premier League this season with 7. So it's clearly an issue for them. You saw it in the cup tie with Bogdan. You saw it again with Mignolet midweek. There is an issue with their goalkeepers as well. They've bought a goalkeeper in Simon Mignolet that I think many people thought was brilliant. For me, he fits what I call the Scott Carson paradigm, which is when Scott Carson was at Charlton, everyone thought he looked exceptional. He had England call-ups off the back of it. The reason he looked so great was because he was making so many saves, because he was facing so many shots. So it's easier to get, say, a 75% shot save ratio if you're facing 15, 20 shots a game. The difficulty is, and you look across the box at David De Gea, if you've got to make 4 or 5 saves in a game and you get that same percentage, it's much more impressive because you're getting less to do. There's a different mentality. That's the reason Ben Foster shone at Watford but never made it at Man United, because it's
Roy
a totally different. Exactly. There's been so many that have done well at lesser clubs or smaller clubs with more action, more intensity, more stuff to do, and then struggled when you're expected to do very little over the course of 90 minutes. And Mignolet fits into that brief for me. And if I'm truthful, the entire goalkeeping situation at Liverpool needs an overhaul. I don't see futures for Bogdan. Ward is still young.
Yeah, and he had a good loan period, but then again, we're sort of talking about that step up, aren't we?
Yeah, you're putting him in Scottish football, which is a very difficult thing to gauge in relation to the
Premiership, though, Chris. It's still the Premiership.
It is. It's the top league in Scotland. It's not just any league.
Yeah, it's also a league geographically above England.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I just think that, again, they need to get rid of Mignolet or at most put him back to second choice. The difficulty is
he's not going to take.
Don't want to pay a second choice that much money.
Yeah,
you'd be better off. And I was talking to David Priest about this. He's a former goalkeeper who, funny enough, played for Aberdeen, who David Ward was on loan at. And he was saying he much prefers the idea of having a veteran second choice and loaning out young keepers. And I think that's what they've got to do. They've got to go out and find choice. Well, the first choice is your most promising goalkeeper, and then your second choice is a veteran relative to him. That's what I think they've got to do. They've got to go out there and find someone who, again, has this promising potential. It's difficult because there's not a huge wealth of them, and that's why a lot of Man United fans now, I'm sure Dave will echo that, are delighted that the fax machine broke, because you can't replace David Gea. They tried with Romero when the deal looked close. They had Valdez in there as well. They just weren't the same. It was good, but it wasn't the same. It was knockoff Coke.
It was good, but it's not right. Well, guys, thanks very much for joining us for the review of the Manchester United away win against Liverpool. Just 1-0 in the end. Chris, it's been great to have you on the channel. We'll see you again soon.
Look forward to it.
Go find him on Twitter. The names and everything are below. Dave, it's been good to have you. Dave Talks.
Cheers, lots. Dave Talks.
And we'll see you again real soon on the front three.